Hello, people. Another beautiful day. Yeah. Hope your five senses work. Health and strength is good. What? Now, we talking about Call of Duty here. Listen to this. Sony to Brazilian regulators. No rival, meaning Microsoft, can overtake Call of Duty. Says Sony speak to Brazilian regulators about Microsoft's $68.7 billion Activision Blizzard buyout. Expresses how big Call of Duty is. Says here, worldwide regulators are asking competitors like Sony for a comment on Microsoft Activision Blizzard buyout and how it could affect competitors' position in the market. Sony had a few choice words to say about Activision's most popular franchise. Says here, Call of Duty is the top shooter series of all time. It's a powerhouse franchise that helped Microsoft and Sony generate combined billions every year. Even with the 30% split, we've already calculated that Sony, and in parentheses it says, and Microsoft, would lose hundreds of millions if Call of Duty is kept off PlayStation platform. Should Microsoft's $68.7 billion Activision Blizzard deal close. But Sony has delivered official comments reiterating how important Call of Duty is for gaming. Says here, in an official response to Brazilian Administrative Council for Economic Defense, CADE, that's in parentheses, as found on this webpage and machine translated for this article, Sony legal representation said that Call of Duty is unrivaled in the game industry. Representation indicates that Call of Duty exclusivity could be a paradigm shift for game market. And then here's what it means. Says here, no other developer can devote the same level of resource and expertise to game development, even if they could. Call of Duty is heavily entrenched so that no rival, no matter how relevant, can overtake it. Call of Duty has been the top-selling game for nearly year over the past decade, and for its genre, it's overwhelmingly the best-selling game. It's synonymous with first-person shooters and essentially defines that category. And the reason that being is because, remember I explained to you weeks ago, that EA with Battlefield used to go toe-to-toe with Call of Duty. But then when they created the loot box, and then they decided to go challenge the European Union, EA fell off course. So now Call of Duty is in a world to itself. So Activision kept making Call of Duty, and then when they dropped Warzone put Call of Duty in the throne of king of military shooters. Come get some, okay? So Call of Duty now is the top military shooter, in video games. Period. And Microsoft putting $68.7 billion down to acquire Activision Blizzard is huge. But Microsoft also knows that the PlayStation user base is big, and even though Microsoft have Game Pass, and the Game Pass user base is not big, if they miss out on the PlayStation fan base with Call of Duty, it's not going to add up. So Sony making this statement that no rival can overtake Call of Duty. What that means is that Sony wants Call of Duty to keep being on PlayStation, even though Microsoft has control over it. Once the $68 billion goes through, and Microsoft has control over it, Microsoft can still keep Call of Duty on PlayStation. That way the PlayStation players can play Call of Duty and they can still make a profit off of it. So this deal is big, man. And the PlayStation user base is it's a huge one. Remember, PlayStation 1 laid a huge foundation once Square Enix and Sony got married, man. Tied the knot with PlayStation 1. That foundation was big. then that carried over into PlayStation 2. Then that carried over into PlayStation 3. Remember when Sony created online play with PlayStation 2? And then here comes Call of Duty and Medal of Honor and all that. So once we got the PlayStation 3 and Call of Duty got big, the PlayStation got a huge fan base that plays Call of Duty on PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4 and 5. So Microsoft now, who came into the industry in the Microsoft, when they bought first Activision, remember when they bought ZeniMax Bethesda, right? Phil Spencer says they will deal with games on a case-by-case basis, right? So now, once they bought Activision Blizzard for 68.7 billion, after spending 7.5, that shocked me still to this day. They know now that statement that they made about dealing with games on a case-by-case basis, they're going to have to honor that, because they can't afford to miss out on this, miss out with Call of Duty not being on PlayStation. And they're going to have to keep Call of Duty there. They will still own the rights to Call of Duty, even though they still got Game Pass, but that PlayStation user base, man, is big, and there are a lot of players, a lot of Call of Duty players, man, on PlayStation. Whether it's the PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5. You can check you can check all the Call of Duty matches. There's always people on PlayStation playing that game. So Microsoft can't miss out. They can't miss out on that. So Sony making this statement now is out of I would say anger or kind of frustration. It's kind of like when Activision Blizzard was going through all that drama. They didn't see it as an opportunity. To me, Sony wasn't inclined as Microsoft. They didn't see that as an opportunity to buy Activision Blizzard. But Microsoft did. And Microsoft, once Activision Blizzard was wounded, they swooped in like an eagle, and got him. So yeah, you know, Microsoft is looking for any opportunity to keep Game Pass going. And once they saw that Activision Blizzard situation, they swooped in, got him. So yeah, but even though this deal is about to go through, Phil Spencer and the heads at Microsoft and the entire Xbox gaming division, they know they can't just keep Call of Duty on Xbox alone. They got to keep it on PlayStation, even though they have executive exclusive rights to it. Okay, because that's a huge landscape, and that would hurt the PlayStation fan base, man. If Call of Duty's not on PlayStation, it will really damage the PlayStation fan base. So right now, Microsoft is holding all the cards. So that statement that Phil Spencer made when they bought ZeniMax Bethesda, talking about they're going to deal with games on a case-by-case basis, I don't think they want to miss out on the user base when it comes to Call of Duty on PlayStation. So we'll see what they do, but yeah, it's big, man. So this is the war that's brewing right now over Call of Duty. Yep. And go on from there, and you know, see what happens. But when they dropped that 68.7 billion, man, that was huge. That was a wake-up call to Sony too. A wake-up call to Nintendo, like, look, stop taking the video game industry for granted. You know, stop taking the video game industry for granted. Stop taking your users, your user base for granted, or stop taking your PlayStations or Nintendo hardware for granted. That was a wake-up call. So yeah, you know, and, everybody's on their toes now. But when it comes to this whole Call of Duty situation, Microsoft knows they're gonna have to keep Call of Duty on PlayStation, even if they own them. You know, but the statement that they're making is true, because it would damage the PlayStation fan base, man. It would. So we'll see what they do, what Xbox does after that, once the deal goes through. Anyway, I'm going to leave this video for y'all to enjoy. Nice talking to you people again. Chris, still Star Wars and Star Trek fan, or Dark Side. Go. Peace.